Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, everyone, I hope you recognize our guest. She is our first ever health and fitness guest that we had on, Dasha. She's come all the way back to come on the podcast and share some tips and tricks, especially during the summertime. We're going to ask her a few summer-related questions and a few other questions about health and fitness and get her opinion on that. But first of all, Dasha, thank you so much for coming back on.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, everyone, if you go and look on her Instagram, she just came back from Thailand. How was that trip that you went to Thailand for?
It was amazing. It was so relaxing and nice. It was like the Caribbean, but on the other side of the world.
Oh, that's so lucky. Yeah, I've always wanted to make a trip out there. So yeah, that's awesome. But so what have you been up to basically since we've talked to you? Have you been, I know that you've been still doing the personal training and helping people and consultating people. How's that been going?
That's been great. That's been great. Yeah, I've been working on Core Restore, helping a lot of people with their gut flora and restoring their health. And it's so rewarding to see and to be a part of their journeys and their progress. So
yeah, and that's awesome. So we'll get into some of the questions now because some of them are elaborate and they take some really, big answers to deal with. So for the first question that I really wanted to ask, because you had a post on your Instagram about, you took an extended absence because when you're in Thailand, you might not have been able to go to the gym as much. And one of the big things that I really struggle with too is especially doing this podcast and having my normal, 40-hour a week job is that there are, weeks where I can only go to the gym, like once, or and a lot of people deal with that too, especially during the winter and summer months, just trying to find that time to balance the gym and every other aspect of their life. So there are people that have a lot of extended absences. And what were some things that you found have really helped for you with that extended absence from going back into the gym? We're getting back in the swing of things without overtraining and overtiring yourself so that you are less motivated to continue. What are some tips and tricks that you have for the general public for that?
So I'm going to start with how hard it is to let go of the training first,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's the most important aspect. Because actually, not being able to train for 3 weeks is like extremely difficult for someone who has it regimented in their routine. They like to be active. And the first thing I recommend that will translate through everything in life is to let go of your ego. If you start talking to yourself, I need to go to the gym, I need to do this, I want this, I want that burger, like I want this. It's you're creating this I, right? And when you're in the gym, that might look more like something like, I need to get this higher, heavier weight because I need to look better, or I need to be able to get strength progress. And once you realize that that I is the thing that's really holding you back at the end of the day, that's when you found like so much more to this world. So in the sense of like letting go of that ego, like I really don't need to go to the gym for 3 weeks. Like, let's be honest, I really don't need that. I can go and I can walk around and I can enjoy the culture that I'm around. Like, how thankful am I and grateful that I have this opportunity, right? And like, why not embrace it fully? So that's what I did. I didn't train for 3 weeks. And so getting back into the gym, I have also kind of shifted my priorities in life right now because I just graduated with my master's from Tufts. And so now I have this take on, now I have this priority, right? Like before, I was kind of the 1%, right? I could dedicate all my life to training, I could dedicate it all to nutrition and creating an absolutely incredible physique because that was my priority. Like I went to school and I trained. That's about it. But now I have graduated and now I have to actually enter the career world, right? My new priorities have changed. And what that means is that bodybuilding isn't so strict in my life. And I've let go of that ego. I go into the gym and I'm like, I feel like I want to do this. Like I have control over my plans for that day. And that's really rewarding and freeing. So, and I think that everyone can achieve that balance in their life. What I recommend doing is letting go of that ego, because once you get back from that vacation and you're trying to get back into the grand scheme of things, you can just feel like, I feel like crap today. That's okay, but I'm going to go through the motions and maybe do half of the weight, maybe do a quarter of the weight that I usually do. I just am getting back into the motion of what I used to love to do and seeing where my body's at right now. really, I can't stress enough letting go of that ego. Because if you let the ego stand firm and tall, you're gonna risk injury, burnout, um, further depletion, like overworking yourself, and you're just gonna hate the fact that you're there to begin with. And what's that to set you up for a new routine, right? So I hope that helps.
Oh, absolutely. Because one of the things that, I struggled with, especially getting back, is just realizing that, like, hey, I'm going to have to work this much harder just to get back to the degree that I was at before I took this extended absence. But yeah, just letting go of that ego and just saying, like, hey, just go into the gym and just go through some of the motions if you're really struggling, and just realize that, a lot of it's muscle memory too. And especially if you have that background of working out, it is going to be easier to get back to that shape as opposed to someone who's just starting out from the beginning. So yeah, I really recommend, that ego too as well. And now, especially now that you're entering the career force, just kind of like where I am, where, you're not going to have all that time. Like I remember in college, when I was in college too, I could literally, yeah, just go to class and just lift. That's basically the two things that I really could do. So yeah, just realizing those priorities might need to be readjusted, but still, just finding that time for yourself. I mean, it's just so important. But one of the things that I thought was really important too is that a lot of people talk about the link between depression and nutrition. I just find that really, really fascinating on how someone's mental state can be affected by what they eat. Is there a link between depression and nutrition in your opinion? And if so, can people make their nutrition help their depression? And is it a lot more individualized, or are there some general basic knowledge that people could use just to overall help themselves?
Right. So we know from like just general exercise makes us feel good, right? It gives us endorphins. It really helps us out. So the other aspect to that, of course, is nutrition. So poor gut flora is actually associated with a numerous amount of disorders, behavioral, mood, psychological, things like depression, anxiety, even autism. Um, there was actually a study that showed that the complete absence of microbiota in germ-free mice induced impression like behavior in them. So if you have this impairment in your gut, then you will have this depressive like symptoms, right? And once they actually recolonized the bacteria in the gut in the mice, they were able to see improved social behavior. So these psychological disorders like depression and autism, they're characterized by this higher intestinal permeability and this chronic low grade inflammation. Um, there's also neurotransmitter signaling alterations and um, things with the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary axis. That dysfunction leads to excessive stress, more induced corticosteroid release. And I know this is like a lot of different science vocabularies, but all I'm trying to say is all of these processes are really influenced by the gut. So yes, your nutrition influences your gut microbiota, and it's an integral part of the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is a crosstalk between the gut and your brain. Through this axis, the central nervous system and the gut actually communicate through endocrine and immune and neural pathways using the GI tract to do so. That's kind of a lot.
I'm not gonna lie, I had the Jeopardy theme playing through my mind through most of that. I really skimmed my, but yeah, that just sounds super, super fascinating how they were able to figure that out. But is there just a specific type of food group that people should avoid that are more prone to depression?
So that's a great question. So something that I like to do as a coach is talk about foods that we can include versus restrict.
Okay.
I am all about including more foods because if you think about it, the more foods you include, the more likely you're going to be to swap it out for something that's probably less beneficial for you, right? So let's talk about things that we can include. A lot of the first thing that I recommend all of my Core Restore clients, first of all, I recommend starting Core Restore if you're dealing with something with like a gut dysbiosis.
I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below for anyone interested.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to hop on a call with anyone that's interested. Just shoot me an email. I'll give a 15-minute free call to talk about like what's been going on with you. But I believe that everyone has some sort of inflammation in their bodies, perhaps. You never really know, right? It could be just from stress from work. Like who knows? But this can impact the health of your gut, and that can then lead to different, again, neurotransmitter problems or Maybe it's like your mood, your acne, like it's really all connected, your hormones. But the first thing that I tell all my clients is for inflammation is to increase their omega-3 intake. And I think that that's a general thing that most people know about, but they want there to be some sort of more magic pill to it, right? My biggest suggestion is really omega-3s because that's been studied very well, especially in terms of the gut flora, and managing inflammation with that. So I recommend the omega-3s, things like salmon, olive oil, sardines are great sources. If you're still struggling with that, including that, I would recommend a fish oil or a flax oil for vegans. Um, Another thing that really helps with the gut is perhaps like a bone broth, just warm, soothing. If you're consuming enough protein in your diet, no, you don't need bone broth in your life. But if protein's kind of hard for you to consume, why not just drink it, right? And bone broth's a great way to do so for your gut, just because of the glycine content in it. And that has a minor anti-inflammatory effect, but it's pretty minor. So if you're getting enough protein overall, you should be fine. But for those who are struggling with it.
I'm actually writing all these down, and when I'm editing this, I'm actually going to have the names of everything just put up like on the left side of the screen when we're talking, so that people can know. So bone broth, salmon, fish oils, all those. Everyone, if you really are interested into that, I definitely go and look into that. But we touch base very very briefly on hormones, and one of the questions that I also love to ask is how do hormones influence muscle growth? Because a lot of people when they think about muscle growth, they do not think about the hormones that really influence that.
Yeah, so we can talk about first testosterone, which is a hormone that most people know that increases your muscle mass. But now I think the problem nowadays is more of the estrogens and males and females dealing with overactive, more estrogen production than they'd like.
Is that rumor true that a lot of people say that if you drink bottled water, there's estrogen in that?
No, but I think I realize what they're trying to say. So plastic has endocrine disruptors in it, certain forms. So it doesn't necessarily have estrogen in it, but perhaps in very, very large amounts, it could hurt you. Now, do I know if this has been done? Like, I don't know how many bottles of water you necessarily have to drink in order for this to happen. Do I think that if you're sweating regularly and have a healthy liver, that your body will be able to naturally process this? I think most of us are okay, especially if you go to the gym and you sweat. I just wanted to say that to explain the reason why estrogens are actually becoming a problem more and more. It doesn't have to do necessarily with the plastic that we're consuming, which may be a confounding factor, but more so, I believe it has to do with the nutrition. So, nutrition causes dysbiosis and leaky gut, if you've heard of that. And that just increased intestinal permeability allows toxins to be released or bacteria from the stomach into the bloodstream. And that's when we start having a lot of these issues. The other thing I just wanted to touch upon is that estrogen, there's actually something called the estrobolome in the gut. And these are bacteria whose genes are responsible for breaking down the compounds of estrogen from the liver, I believe, if I'm interpreting my charts mentally correctly. And this is what's causing this recycling of estrogens due to the dysbiosis in the gut is what's causing increased levels of estrogen in the gut and additionally compounding. So now you have dysbiosis, now you have too much estrogen, and now you're really feeling the symptoms of some sort of chronic disease, and it's really affecting your day to day lifestyle. So I just wanted to go back a little bit because I feel like estrogens are really in the some of them are processed, they're mainly processed in the liver, but some of them are also a lot of them in the estrobolome, and that's where we see a lot of this all this coming together, and that again will influence your muscle growth for sure. But yeah. Uh,
I always say my older brother always used to joke. He's like, "Don't drink the bottled water. You're gonna get boobs, Ryan." So then he'd always used to say that to me. So that's why it kind of that's why that when we were talking about that, just the estrogen, I was like, okay, that's the one thing that I really associate with that. But a thing that also when we were talking about with the first question with going back to the gym and really finding a routine, a thing that I really also applies to that too is a lot of people when they go back into the gym or just regular training in general, they don't realize their threshold basically for when they are overtraining a muscle because a lot of people aren't able to realize that tolerance that their muscles have as opposed to overtraining the muscle. And one thing that can really happen when you first go back to the gym is that you can overtrain to sort of try to compensate for the lack of time that you've spent outside of the gym. But then there's also those people that think, like, hey, if I train a muscle group, every single day for an extended period of time, it's going to really help it grow. But what are some keys or tips that you have for people to realize the difference between overtraining a muscle and just getting a really good pump and a really good burn in?
yeah, so a really good pump and a really good burn feels great. But the characteristics of more overtraining is something that feel systemically. So things like fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, chronic inflammation, joint pain may occur. And most importantly, your performance isn't going to be improving week to week. You're going to have low energy. A lot of people just feel like sometimes they even experience things like flu, just kind of like flu-like, you're just aching and you feel like you're just like, ugh. Now it doesn't have to get to that point, right? Thankfully, just being aware and being more in tune with your body, what can it handle today? And again, letting go of that ego and not pushing yourself to do the extra. Like maybe you had fun with your friends and you all did a little bit too much volume or you overtrained one day, but letting go of the ego and allowing yourself to actually recover from it, that's where it's going to be most important. I've worked like 4 or 5 years. I'm just now last year probably or the past 2 years I've been really getting more in tune with that. It's hard to understand, but once you know, you'll start to know. You'll start to pick up on it.
And yeah, and that's I totally recommend that too because there is a huge difference just coming from someone that has worked out for a long time as well myself. That I mean, it just takes a lot of experience though to realize that, especially when you're just first getting started into the gym. But now the question that I have been asked by friends all over to ask you because for a lot of women this is something that they suffer with and it's one of those problem areas that they really want to get rid of is the arm flab. I mean, especially now that it's summer season, everyone wants to be in their summer best and be in their summer wear, especially being out at the beach. So obviously, I mean, it's one of the biggest problem areas that a lot of women talk about. What are some of your tips for all the women out there to get rid of some of that arm flab?
Okay, so this is a common misconception, but unfortunately, we cannot spot reduce. So we cannot get rid of fat in one specific area. For example, people who train their abs every day, it's not going to make your abs smaller. It's going to make them bigger because they're also a muscle and they will also grow. So you can't spot reduce. What you can do is induce a constant or consistent caloric deficit that'll make you lose weight. It'll shed the fat while perhaps if you're building muscle in that area, building out the muscle, losing the fat. That's what it's about. Making that muscle grow won't make the fat go away. You got to know that way. So just stay consistent with your routine, stay consistent with a healthy diet. That'll put you in a position that'll set you up right for your goals and keep going at it. Don't overtrain that one muscle because it's not going to grow if you keep hitting it.
Is that why some of because one of the things that I'm really fascinated by is sometimes like people have those stomachs that really protrude from their bodies and but they still have those really defined abs. Is that really from overtraining the abs most likely?
If you're talking about competitive bodybuilders, most likely it's due to steroids, but yes. It has to do a lot with building out your muscles. So a lot of times competitive, like when you go into bikini, they say like don't do those exercises because you don't want to grow out the waist. You kind of want it to just stay. But that's like more competition mode. Basically, if you want the muscle to grow and get bigger, you exercise it in moderate amounts so that it can recover. If you don't want it to grow, then just leave it. Let it be.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And now this is a type of exercise that I mean, almost every health and fitness guest that I've had on swears by. I'd see a good majority of them, probably 75 to 80%. But time under tension training. What are your thoughts on time under tension training?
Yeah, so there's three mechanisms of hypertrophy, and hypertrophy is muscle growth, right? So one mechanism of this muscle growth is mechanical tension. The other two are metabolic stress and muscle damage. So in total, the three are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. So when you're saying time under tension training, to me, it just seems like you're ignoring two of the other mechanisms you could be using additionally. So maybe your guests have been swearing by it because they haven't actually gone into that type of style of training before. And now they see it and they're like, oh, well, this is a new thing. Well, it's not really a new thing. It's just your good training program should have probably been hitting all three mechanisms to begin with. Um, and that's something that I set up for my clients as well. Just good training programs that target all three aspects of muscle growth, so you know you're not wasting your time at the gym.
So what were those three aspects again? Just so I can remember, just to get those fresh.
Uh-huh. It's mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage.
Okay. Yeah. So are there different techniques for each all three of those, or like you said, is there a program that really you can just take care of all three of them in the same workout?
Yeah, you can take care of all three of them in the same workout. And there are different ways of going about hitting those aspects. So, for example, like metabolic stress might be like a higher rep range, a burnout. That's what it might look like. Most of the time, I would put that at the end because you're using a lighter weight and you're just going to failure. Whereas you could also go to failure and induce that muscle damage in the beginning with high loads and mechanical tension. And maybe mechanical tension might be also allowing you to get more metabolic stress by putting more weight on the bar. So again, they kind of all interplay, and the layout of how you want to optimally do that will be in a good training program.
No, yeah, and I highly recommend everyone, to go and check out all of Daja's stuff. I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. But moving on, so obviously being the summertime, I mean everyone's gonna want those summer treats that are really gonna be good for you. I mean, I know I swear by those freezies that they serve at, like Cub Foods or any of those places, those little one. I mean, I know they're all sugar, but I just can't have enough of them. But what are some summer treats that are not only good for you but enjoyable as well that you like to recommend to people?
Um, so one that actually people don't know, I was surprised. I thought this was a well-known thing. Frozen grapes. Have you had those before?
Never tried them before, but I immediately want them right now.
Yeah, they're really good. So anyways, I would suggest like whole fruit. Of course, I suggest whole fruit, nuts, and dark chocolate without the sugar added if you can get like a pure 100% cacao. Um, of course, these are like obviously the best types of desserts, I think. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're the like ones we would go for, right? Like I would love like an ice cream or an cake, right? And there are a bunch of companies now that are giving you these options. But of course, they're all processed foods, and I mean that's a whole nother conversation. Which I don't think that processed foods are necessarily bad for you or anything. But we just have to, if you're talking about micronutrients, at the end of the day, if you're talking about something that's good for you, it's probably high in micronutrients and good for your body. And that would be things like whole fruit, the nuts, the dark chocolate, things. And the one of the ones that I recommend is freezing your whole fruit. So I love like frozen bananas. You could dip them in the chocolate. You could do the frozen grapes. I've seen people like put the frozen grapes if you wash them and then put jello mix on top. Apparently it makes like a Sour Patch Kid style. You just use some fruit and you combine it with gelatin, like fresh gelatin from gelatin powder. I believe Vital Proteins has some. That's the one I use, and think I have a discount link.
Oh, that's
We can,
awesome. Yeah.
we can include that as
We
well
can
if you.
include that. Yeah, again, I mean, yeah, and that's why I love having her on because she's very generous with all that stuff. So and yeah, and that's just so awesome. But again, I'll leave a link to all that stuff, and I'll leave a list of all the stuff that we just talked about with the frozen treats or with the treats that you can use for the summertime. But now we got a couple final questions here, and these are some really important ones, especially since Daja is really, really good on with gut health. I mean, she's almost I'd call her an expert on gut health. I mean, if you look at all of her posts that she has on Instagram, very, very informed on that. And what does the keto diet or the ketogenic diet for anyone out there who doesn't know that, but what do the keto diet and gut health have in common?
I don't know what they would have in common, um, but I will tell you about how it influences the gut. So, the keto diet is a diet that's very high in fat, very low in carbohydrates, and pretty low to moderate protein, which people often overdo. But the actual diet itself, historically, is pretty low to moderate protein. It's not very high. But as a result of the very low carbohydrates, we're actually getting rid of fruits and vegetables and starches and all these things that the good flora in your bacteria feed on. So, a lot of the studies that are coming out on the gut microbiota and the ketogenic diet are showing that people who follow the ketogenic diet may have less bacterial diversity, which means that they don't have as much of a healthy gut. And the reason why is fiber, probably, I'm assuming. Um, and they're just not getting enough of that fiber. It's very difficult to get in enough fiber when your carbs are so low to begin with. So that just causes a lot of, again, dysbiosis. Dysbiosis may cause leaky gut. Leaky gut then causes the chronic diseases. So it's a push and pull, right? Can you follow the ketogenic diet for 3 or 4 or 6 months and see benefits? Absolutely. And it may not even impact your gut health that much within that short of time frame. But would I recommend the ketogenic diet to someone for more than a year? No. No. Absolutely not.
We've had people on here that have done it for like 5 years, and even then when I listened to them I was like, oh geez, yeah, yeah.
Mean, you're really just you're purposefully lowering your body's ability to convert and metabolize carbohydrates. You're purposefully inducing your body to not be able to process carbohydrates. So it just doesn't make sense to me. Same thing would happen if you did like a low fat diet. Your body is going to be less able to break down fat. So you're really just setting yourself up for failure, right? So I truly believe in a holistic, every macronutrient is important. I really believe that that's the best option.
One thing that I found interesting, I mean, this wasn't one of the questions that I had prepared, but I think obviously you posted about it today and I found it interesting, is that you stopped tracking your macros in your foods, and your body has basically been able to tell itself, what is right and what is wrong. Is that something that you think would happen to a lot of people, or is that just because you have been just so especially onto that for such a long period of time that your body's just gotten used to it?
Honestly, I think that people struggle their whole lives with this. I don't think I honestly am proud to I don't mean to sound like um I don't know what the right word is, but I think that we all struggle in life with finding this balance with food, like being mentally and physically okay with the foods that we eat. And again, I think it goes back to that ego, right? We're scared to let go of that ego and scared to let go of what having control of what our body looks like, and that's preventing us from really getting in tune with our actual feeling, how we feel. But I do think it has to do a lot with just my background in nutrition, knowing, having done it for so long. But I'm also just really, I've noticed I'm not eating like I was before. I've noticed that um, I snack a lot more. I like pick a lot more at things and just like nuts. And I'm actually getting in more nutrient dense foods, perhaps, just by like snacking on nuts or allowing whatever is going on to happen. And you have to remember that even going out to eat, like now I have more freedom in going out to eat. I don't feel like it's derailing my progress or anything because I can just go out. And that's actually like so much so much benefit, right? Because it's a social interaction, it's a stress reliever. It's something that puts a smile on my face, and if at the end of the day it's making me happy, then that's something I should be doing more of, I think.
Oh, one, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And yeah, if you, I mean, she has found a way to make it so that her body, just knows or has a lot better, more intuitive knowledge. I mean, I'm gonna try my best to compare it to like if you wake up every morning at like 6 a.m. Eventually, you might not need your alarm clock. Although buyer beware on that one. I have tried that before and it has worked. Not so well sometimes. I've been late to a few classes. But for the last question that I have written down, and I'll just do a few basic ones at the end. But for the last one, so a lot of people have gut health, and I mean honestly, before I had you on, I had no idea that gut health was such a big issue for so many people because I was just one of those people that was blessed to not have any recognizable gut health issues. But when I really started looking into it and everything that you're talking about on Instagram, I mean, it was just so informative for me. And it just got me to wonder, are there really any basic foods that really anyone with gut issues can eat, or is it just so specific to what you have with your own personal gut that allows you what to eat? So like, is there like a gravy, or is there like just a basic food type that really anyone that has gut issues can really know deep down that they can probably eat?
Yeah. So this is a great question. And I think that at the end of the day, no, because we're all so different, right? But I will tell you that something that we touched upon earlier would be bone broth. And I think that this is like, I'm about to tell you the secret one recipe that you can make on Sundays that will make gut health a breeze for the rest of the week. So, what you do is you take a whole chicken, and perhaps you have a lectin issue and chicken is not the best option. Maybe you use a nice grass fed beef, or maybe you use a fish. Whatever it is, you want to make sure it got the bones in there. You throw it in whole, the whole chicken, the whole fish, the whole beef with the bones, and you let it sit and you put the spices in. You can find a bunch of recipes online, whatever. The point is, you take a pot of water, you throw in the meat, you throw in the spices, and then you let it cook. And then a lot of things that you could also add into the soup that I'm going to give you more flexibility in terms of what you can accept and what you can't accept. Things maybe like sweet potato or a nice like Swiss chard or kale or another dark leafy green that'll really soften up in the broth, and just any vegetable that your body agrees with a lot. So throw it all in there and forget about it.
Giving us so many good ideas, and that's just awesome. And I highly recommend anyone go and try that out. But now we just go to just a fun little few quick questions, just to sort of pick her brain on some things. So when you were in Thailand, what was your favorite Thai food that you enjoyed?
Ooh, I love curry. I love a good curry. I'm usually pretty careful though, because sometimes it can upset my stomach. So a curry. Thankfully, I personally have celiac disease, so a lot of the soy-based things I had to stay away from. But I did try because I was in the country, and I suffered through the symptoms, and I'm still suffering through them day to day. But we're you only live
It
once.
was
We'll
worth it. Yeah, absolutely. And now that you got your master's degree, what is your dream goal? How would you like to apply your master's into your career?
Yeah, so right now I'm going to do my dietetic internship this fall at the VA hospital in Tampa, and I'm so excited to give back to a community that's deserving, the veterans of the United States, of course. So I'm excited to do that, and after that I'll become a registered dietitian after I pass the boards. Um, Hopefully we'll pass, but I'm pretty confident that I've learned how to study over the years in school. So that'll be a struggle, but it'll be worth it. And I really just wanted to add that credential onto my master's degree so that when I do perform research or work in the industry with consulting, I have the legal background because legally you do need to be a registered dietitian. So adding that in will give me a higher salary too.
Hey, making more of the big bucks. Hey, I can totally understand that. And I always got to say, one of the most inspiring things for me is that when I go to the gym, there's a guy there that was in Iraq and he lost two arms and a leg, and no, two legs and an arm. God, I got that wrong. He's gonna hate me for this because he watches some of my podcasts. But sorry, Greg. But just seeing him and do what he does, I mean, it's just so inspiring. So when you mentioned that you're working at the VA, I mean, that's just. I mean, yeah, those people deserve nothing but the best of treatment, and that's so great that you're willing to give back and to do that. I mean, it's just, I mean, I could always, I mean, I love having, I'm gonna start a thing where I'm actually gonna have some veterans come on the podcast and talk about, their lives. So I'm really looking forward to that. But now, one of my final questions: if we could talk to you a year from now, where would you like to be at in life? What are some goals that you have? I mean, I know we kind of brushed by that a little bit, but if like just your career wise, just overall life, where would you like to be at if we were to talk a year from today?
Um, oh, that's exciting. So a year from now, I will have just graduated from my internship, which means that I would be studying for my boards. So my dreams would be to pass the board exam smoothly and I would say have a heart that is full, a heart and a body that is full of happiness, full of opportunity, full of strength and courage. And I know this sounds really cheesy, but I just want to feel full. Like, you know, that feeling when you're around good people, you feel good in life. Like, that's all I can really dream for.
Yeah. And that's totally awesome. And I ask this final question to every single health and fitness guest that I have on because I think it's just so important. If someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, like, "Oh my God, you look amazing. I really want to get into shape myself." What's the best piece of advice that you have to people just to be able to get started in the gym? Because for so many people, especially with the guests that I have on, I ask them, about their life stories, and they talk about, just getting started is the hardest thing for so many people. Just getting that one foot in the gym. What is your best piece of advice that you like to give, up and coming clients or just people in general that just say, you know what, I'm really struggling with just showing up because showing up is, that's half the job right there.
Right. I think my last response to this was consistency because that's the first thing that came into my mind. But I want to stay on track with the theme that we've been going through this whole podcast. And I'm going to say that it is letting go of your ego. I'm going to wrap it back up by finishing where we started. I think that letting go of that ego and really just learning how to be okay with whatever's going on in life and not creating a problem that doesn't exist. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, that's what we do most of our time.
Guilty as charged with all of that stuff. And again, you guys go and give her a follow on her Instagram page. All of the links down to all of her other stuff down below. I highly recommend it. And I mean, just by listening to her talk, she obviously knows her stuff. I mean, half the things that she was saying, I'm gonna have to look up and just find out what they are because she is so well informed. And I mean, just go on her Instagram page. Such an inspiring page to look at, especially when it comes to gut health and other aspects too. I mean, she's really informed, and then I love she does these Q&A sometimes where people can even ask her questions on her Instagram, and then she answers them. And I mean, yeah, honestly, out of all of the guests that I've had when it comes to being interactive with their audience and really helping inform people, she is definitely one of the best. And honestly, I can admit this now that we're wrapping things up here. This is the one podcast when I first had it with you, I was the most nervous for any guest that I've ever had on because I'd never done health and fitness before, and I'd mainly done just a bunch of like butch guys like in bands basically. So I was like, this was the most nervous podcast. We did this about, I think it was like in July or August of last year, and so yeah, and that's just, and having such a positive experience with her really helped me have more health and fitness guests on. And I think I've had like over 100 of them on now, and it's just so great having them come on and share their journey. So again, Daja, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and really sharing those tips. And again, if I could recommend anyone out there, for people out there who are looking for someone to give advice or just someone to help them out when it comes to health and fitness, Dash is going to be the one that I'm going to recommend. And again, all of the links to all of her stuff down below. And again, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Of course, not a problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.